They're very excited to see us.
Very excited, yes.
Next week, Rachel Reeves is going to tell you a story. In this story, she will be painted as the heroic victim, a chancellor battling forces outside of her control. The wicked Tories and the black hole they're somehow creating in the public finances long after they left office. Donald Trump and his tariffs, Brexit, an event which conveniently she has only become aware of. And of course, inflation, which despite her best efforts keeps rising because of things other people are doing. This story is nonsense. The truth is that next week, Rachel Reeves is going to put up people's taxes to spend more money on benefits. Yep. Everything else she says is a smokescreen for this simple fact, a fact she cannot deny. Let me walk you through it. Earlier this year, the Labour government tried to bring down the welfare bill, a bill which under them is set to rise to £100 billion a year on sickness benefits alone. In opposition, they seemed to think this wasn't a problem. They arrived in office with no plan to cut spending. But last autumn, seeing that they were in a financial hole, they thought maybe they could find £5 billion of savings. Of course, nowhere near enough, but at least it was something. But when it came down to it, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were no match for their left-wing backbenchers. They capitulated and ended up passing a bill that cost money instead. And Mel will talk about that in more detail. But in summary, Labour MPs created a new £5 billion hole in the Chancellor's estimates. Mm-hmm. And since then, we have had nothing but drift. Last week, we had the farce of the Prime Minister accidentally firing the starting gun on the race to replace him, shooting himself in both feet in the process. So now, instead of trying to make savings in the budget, we are seeing a rush of announcements to appease Labour backbenchers and try to shore up his position. Just a few months ago, Rachel Reeves was saying she couldn't afford to scrap the two-child benefit cap. Now it looks like it's becoming her latest U-turn. So far from bringing down the welfare bill, she's going to add another £3.5 billion to it. That's £8.5 billion she's going to have to find next week in taxes. More taxes to pay for more welfare spending. We need to call this out for what it is. Labour are raising taxes to pay for Keir Starmer's weakness on welfare. All this government is delivering is higher taxes and out-of-control spending. And nobody voted for this. The British public don't want higher welfare spending. They want people to be in work, providing for themselves. Keir Starmer has already broken his manifesto promise not to raise tax on working people with last year's jobs tax. That jobs tax has been passed to all of us through higher prices, lower wages, and lost jobs. Unemployment has gone up every single month since Labour have been in office. Instead of putting up taxes, they should be making savings. They should look at our plan, which we will happily share with them. We have already announced, as many of you know, how we would save £47 billion, including £23 billion from welfare. But they are going in exactly the opposite direction. Ever more spending, ever more welfare. If this Labour government scraps the two-child benefit cap, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back. Yeah. The cap makes sure people on benefits have to make the same decisions about having children as everyone else. This is fairness. But this is not the kind of fairness that Labour believe in. Only the Conservatives believe in the fairness of the two-child benefit cap. Every single other party in politics, the Lib Dems, the Greens, and even Reform, want to scrap it. Right now, Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf are holding a press conference on how they would save money. But in reality, they want to increase benefits by scrapping the two-child benefit cap. They just don't get it. None of these parties do. The Conservative Party are the only party in this country committed to living within our means. However, it is Starmer and Reeves who are actually running the country. And what they are planning to do is freeze income tax thresholds so that more and more people are dragged into higher rates through a stealth tax bombshell. Rachel Reeves even said at the last budget that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people and take money out of their pay slips. But apparently, she doesn't mind doing that if it will fund more benefits and shut her backbenchers up. Funnily enough, the amount she will raise from breaking her promise on thresholds is almost exactly what she needs to splurge on welfare. The fact is, they are hiking taxes on people in work to give handouts to people out of work. The last group of people who might still vote for Labour. And if it wasn't already clear that Labour are the party of welfare, not the party of working people, it is clear now. Because these changes they are making are not fair, they are not right, and we will oppose them every single step of the way. We have identified £47 billion of savings, including £23 billion from welfare reforms. Labour repeatedly dismissed that figure because they do not want to admit that any savings are possible. They have given up trying, and that means things will only get worse. There is an alternative. We spent a year doing the hard work to find savings. Our golden economic rule means every pound saved will be split between cutting the deficit and cutting taxes or funding key priorities, like abolishing stamp duty, a measure which will stimulate economic growth, unlock the housing market, and create jobs. Our golden economic rule is honest, it is disciplined, and it is rooted in simple conservative principles. Spend less, tax less, reward effort, restore stability. This is our alternative. It's the Conservative plan for a stronger economy. Cut spending, cut tax, back business, and get Britain working again. Thank you. And now, over to Mel.
Thank you, Kemi, and good morning, everyone. The Chancellor wants us all to believe that tax rises are necessary, that they are inevitable, that there is no other way. That simply is not true. This budget is about choices. Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have shown when it comes to controlling the benefits bill, they lack either the inclination or the backbone to act. In the summer, Labour made a panicked and unfunded U-turn on their welfare changes, which, as Kemi has set out, left a £5 billion black hole in our public finances. Let's be clear. Even if those savings had been delivered, they would still have seen the benefits bill continuing to skyrocket. But incredibly, the government have now effectively ruled out making any further attempts at savings. The terms of reference for their review of sickness benefits say that it will be conducted assuming that spending is in line with the OBR's forecasts. If you look at those forecasts, you will see that the government is simply planning for failure. In fact, the latest numbers from March showed that spending on PIP alone would rise by almost 1/3 over the course of this Parliament. That's from £27 billion to £35 billion. That's in real terms. And that was assuming that Labour could make the £5 billion of savings, which they have now abandoned. Not only is this a colossal burden on the public finances, it is also trapping millions of people into a life on benefits when many can and should be working. We need serious and fundamental reforms to get people off benefits and into work, and to get the welfare bill back on a sustainable path. But what are Labour gearing up to do? Precisely the opposite. They look set to scrap the two-child benefit cap, adding a further £3.5 billion of spending to the benefits bill. If that happens, it is hard to see how the Chancellor can justify breaking her promises and putting up taxes on working people. When taxes go up next week, It will not be because of Brexit or because of the Conservatives or global factors or any of the other excuses that Rachel Reeves has tried. It will be to pay for more and more welfare. To give you an illustration, it looks increasingly certain that the Chancellor will freeze tax thresholds for a further 2 years at the budget. That is something she explicitly said she would not do in her budget last year. Her exact words were, "I have come to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their pay slips. I am keeping every single promise on tax that I made in our manifesto. So there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax and national insurance thresholds." In her own words, it will be a breach of the Labour Party manifesto. It will be a stealth tax that will hurt working people. We have calculated that it will cost some families up to £1,300 across the 2 years of that freeze. And it will leave those families paying £900 more in tax every single year going forward. How much will that broken promise raise for the Chancellor? The IFS have estimated it would raise around £8 billion in 29-30. But how much is the Chancellor intending to increase welfare spending? If they abolish the two-child cap on top of the cost of the U-turn in July, that will amount to more than £8 billion added to the benefits bill. In other words, the freezing of tax thresholds, the stealth tax raid on working people, the policy the Chancellor herself said would be a broken promise, will be used simply to pay for Labour's welfare handouts. Labour have totally failed on welfare, and your taxes are going up to pay for it. So I have a simple question for Labour today. Whose side are you on? Because the people who get up in the morning, who go out to work, who juggle a job with raising a family and make sacrifices, who do the right thing, those are the people who are hurting. They see their weekly shop getting more expensive. They see their energy bills rising. They see their jobs being destroyed. They see their local high streets being hollowed out. And they see their taxes going up. We're on their side. Those are the people we should be backing. And those are the very people who are paying the price for this weak and chaotic Labour government. Right. I think we got the message across.
And now I'm going to questions from the media. Romilly Weeks from ITV.
Thank you. These weekday press conferences are a bit of a reform specialty. In fact, they're running one right now too. Are you worried they're stealing all your oxygen? And secondly, on the asylum reforms announced yesterday, you said they're a step in the right direction. Does that mean helping the government get them through?
So on press conferences, I have many press conferences. I'm glad to see you at one of them finally, Romilly. We have press conferences because we have things to say. We spent a year working really hard to make sure that our policies are robust and would stand up to scrutiny. That is not the same for reform, who wait for us to announce things, copy it, and then tweak it slightly. That is not going to work in government, as we are seeing with Labour, who refuse to do their homework and have now run into trouble. On asylum, yes, we will support them on sensible measures. But what I've been saying is that the Home Secretary has arrived where we were in 2023. The rest of the party is still in 2005. They're living in a different world. The Home Secretary knows that there is a small boats crisis. That crisis was not there over the last 14 years. It came in towards the end. But what she doesn't understand is that all of these sensible measures that she's talking about will not work if we are in the ECHR. We spent a lot of time working on this. Our policy is to leave the ECHR because we have to, not because it's something that we just wanted to do. She is going to learn that lesson as she runs into the courts, as there's endless lawfare, judicial review of the policies. That's what happened to us. We tried measure after measure to control immigration when we were in office, and we kept running into lawfare. That's what's going to happen to her. But we're not going to stand in the way like they did. They voted against every single measure that we put to limit immigration. We won't do that because what the public want to see is parties working together to get a grip on this crisis.
Can I Can I just add,
Yes, sure.
very quickly on welfare reform, of course, a key distinction between ourselves and Labour and reform is on the two-child
Yes.
cap. Reform want to abolish that. That's going to cost £3.5 billion, and that's part of the whole argument about where these tax rises are actually going to go, is onto more welfare, and that's where reform are.
Next question from Sky. Sam Coates. Is Sam Coates here? Hi, Sam.
Hello there. Today, figures from the ONS reveal that net migration hit 944,000 at its peak in March 2023, even higher than we thought before. How do you feel when you hear that the Boris wave was that big? Are you embarrassed? Is it shameful? Do you understand why the public struggle to trust you on this issue still?
This isn't about my feelings. This is about what we're going to do to solve that problem. We know that immigration was too high. In fact, once those figures came out, we actually put in quite a few measures to bring immigration down, which worked. Labour taking credit for it, doesn't matter. But we recognized that immigration was too high, not deliberately. This was not a deliberate thing, but it was because people took their eye off the ball, allowing bureaucrats to manage our borders. That was not what people voted for when they voted to leave the EU. But we are fixing that. That is why I have changed our policy. Our borders plan, for example, is a lot more robust, tackles a lot on illegal migration, and we have measures which we will talk about on legal migration too. But the fact of the matter is that we're not going to get a grip on this issue unless, first of all, we leave the ECHR and we start to bring down spending, especially the spending that we have with benefits on foreign people living in our country. We have a separate deal for those with the EU, their treaty rights there, but we need to cut our benefits bill, and bringing migration under control is one of the ways that we will solve that. Catherine Forster from GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. As you've said, Nigel Farage is also holding a press conference at the moment. He's come up with £25 billion of savings, apparently, including ending universal credit payments for all foreign nationals, including EU citizens with settled status. What do you think of that proposal? And also, if I may, freezing tax thresholds, as you've said, is a tax rise on millions of people. You did it for years and years through to 2028. Why was it okay for you to do that, but not okay for Labour? Thank you.
Thank you. So you asked what we think of the idea of removing universal credit from EU citizens with settled status. It is a bad idea. And it is a bad idea because we spent a lot of time negotiating those rights, not just for EU citizens in this country, but British citizens in other countries in the EU. You start unpicking that, and you start unpicking all of the work that was done year after year after year with a lot of pain and, and effort during those years when we were negotiating Brexit. Nigel Farage says that he will just renegotiate those rules. This is completely ridiculous. This man does not know what he's talking about. I am a former trade secretary. Even with friendly countries, trade negotiations are very, very difficult. That is why Keir Starmer has given away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, because they don't know what they're doing. The idea, and we heard these arguments even when he was campaigning for Brexit, that it would be so easy, we'll just walk in and we'll tell the EU what to do. It doesn't work like that. And it is wrong of him to deceive people, lie to them, and make them think this is going to be easy. Government is difficult. That is what we learned. And we need parties in our country, not just Reform, but the Greens and the Lib Dems, to get a grip and start fixing the issues we have rather than living in La La Land. And on the point of tax thresholds, it was wrong to do that. I have said the taxes were too high under previous Conservative governments. I am the new leader of the Conservative Party. I'm not a former Prime Minister. I am talking about what the Conservative Party will do when we are in government next time. I don't have a time machine to go back and fix what other people did. We can also see that those things didn't work. We have learned those lessons. Let's try something new. Let's back business. Right now, businesses are struggling, high street businesses in particular. That's why we want to lift the business rates burden off the high street. It is business that creates jobs, not government. That is why we need to get the burden off business ASAP. Lifting the tax threshold, changing the tax thresholds, freezing the tax thresholds, like Rachel Reeves looks like she's planning to do, is just going to create yet more problems like her last budget created. Thank you, Catherine.
Just quickly on that. So I think there's a big distinction between what happened under us in government, which is that we faced huge inflationary pressures from the Ukraine-Russia war, which had to be dealt with. We had COVID, which shrank the UK economy by over 10% overnight.
Yeah.
And the response to that necessitated various changes, some of which were uncomfortable. What we're looking at here is something entirely different. We're looking at a government that has trashed the economy by taking the wrong choices.
Exactly.
Loading up businesses with taxes, borrowing and spending like there's no tomorrow, pushing up inflation, keeping interest rates higher than they would otherwise be, mounding up our national debt with a huge servicing cost on that national debt and blown fiscal headroom. That is how they've arrived at this place. And the key distinction also is if they do extend the freeze of these thresholds, that will be a clear breach of their manifesto commitment.
Exactly. Mel said it a lot better than I did. This is why we are a team. Yes. Ryan Savey from The Sun.
Thank you. You've been asked repeatedly by Sir Keir Starmer about reversing Labour's increase in employers' national insurance. Business is crying out for it. Will you reverse that decision to get growth going?
Well, what Keir Starmer is asking me to do is clean up the mess that he is making. Every day, he makes an even bigger mess than he had the day before. We don't know what sort of problems we're going to be dealing with at the next election, so we're not writing that manifesto now. But there are some taxes that we know are damaging in and of themselves that we can get rid of. Yesterday, I was at a farming summit listening to farmers screaming about what the changes in APR are doing to them. Labour is destroying farming in our country right now. So we will reverse that, APR, we will reverse BPR. We've talked about abolishing stamp duty and so much more. On other things, we're going to need some time to look at how we fix the mess that Labour is making. We may have to do something really revolutionary. That's what we're working on. But I have promised that I'm not making any announcements until we have plans to back them up. That is my guarantee. We will think through every single thing we do. But we recognize that business has this problem. We know this. We're coming up with ideas and solutions to lift the burden on business. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think it's absolutely right, Kemi. I mean, the heart of our approach is fiscal responsibility, which means you simply do not make huge promises, even on areas like tax that we definitely want to be getting down 4 years out from a general election. We have seen with this government where that kind of approach leads, and we will have right at the heart of everything we do fiscal responsibility and living within
Absolutely. But what business should be in no doubt. We want to reduce the tax burden on business. Exactly how we do that, we will explain nearer the time of the election. With the really damaging taxes, we've explained that we will get rid of them, but it's going to take time to sort out the mess that Labour is making.
And we've also said, Kemi, that we will take 250,000 high street businesses out of business rates altogether, for example.
Exactly. Nick Guttridge from The Telegraph.
Lovely, thanks very much. Could I ask you one each? Mel, first, the 47 billion of savings, can you clarify, is that from public spending as it stands now, or public spending as it will stand after the election? In other words, if the Chancellor spends a load more money between now and the election, such as the two-child benefit cap, will you look to cut back the extra she spends and then the 47 billion? Or could the 47 billion actually just be used basically making savings on the extra spending that she does between now and the election? And Kemi, it's sort of related. Some economists are sort of predicting that at some point Britain might end up having to ask for some sort of international bailouts because the public debt is getting so big. Do you think it's possible for the country to avoid bankruptcy without cutting welfare?
So on your first question, Nick, that is a figure. 47 is the end of the scorecard, which is 29.30. That is when that saving will be achieved and on the current forecast. Of course, you're quite right to point out that there are things that could change between now and the next general election on the spending and taxation side of the ledger, which is why we have built in a 50% golden rule, so that half of the money that we have allocated to tax cuts, over half of that will go to bringing the deficit down to give us that headroom so that we're able to make adjustments as we get closer. But clearly we cannot predict the state of the economy in 4 or 5 years' time. We will have to look at that at that time.
Nick, you asked me, is it possible to avoid bankruptcy without cutting welfare? It's a simple question with a simple answer. No, it is not. You asked about an international bailout. I'm not sure that the IMF has enough money to bail out what this Labour government is piling up. We need to make sure that we avoid that disaster. Cutting welfare is a double whammy in terms of improving the economy. It gets people off benefits and into work, which means that they are paying taxes to the Exchequer. That's the double whammy. That's why we're starting with getting people into work. We need to get Britain working again. And right now, what people are saying is that it doesn't make sense to work. I spoke to farmers yesterday who said it doesn't make any more sense for them to farm. They cannot make a profit. Last week, I spoke to companies in the oil and gas sector. They said they're being taxed 102% of their profits. It doesn't make sense to work. How can we continue like this? Get people off welfare, into work, let's help business, and then we'll grow our economy. The next question from Jason Gross, Daily Mail.
Thank you. The two-child benefit cap applies to children born after 2017. There's about 500,000 families are going to get, in some cases, quite big payments if it is scrapped. Are you going to start again in 2029 with a new cut-off date, or are you putting those families on notice now that you're going to wind it back to 2017, because otherwise the savings will take a long time to come through? And could I ask also, there were some comments, Kemi, about your faith overnight that have been interpreted as you saying cutting benefits is a Christian thing to do. Is that how you see the issue?
So I'll start with the second question. I was speaking to a Christian audience. I was giving a speech to the Conservative Christian Fellowship, and not cutting benefits and allowing the welfare bill to spiral is not a Christian thing to do. We need to get people into work. Leaving debt for the next generation, piling up liabilities, is not a Christian thing to do. And that was a speech talking about how Christian values have helped shape this country, and we need to start living within our means again. That is something that I stand by. On the question of unwinding the changes that Labour makes to the two-child benefit, I think we are putting people on notice. We cannot afford this. If we keep allowing Labour to change the benchmark for where we are, we're never going to solve these problems. And actually, many of the problems we have now are because we did not unwind a lot of Labour's mistakes in 2010, and they continued. We should have fixed the mistakes that they made. That is a promise that I'm making now. Yes, yes. Daisy Eastlake from The Times.
Thank you. Shabana Mahmood said yesterday, when she was accused of being divisive by a white Lib Dem MP, that she's the one regularly being called racist slurs and told to go back home. Is this an experience that you can sympathise with? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that when you have ethnic minorities, especially ethnic minority women, doing things that are not part of the playbook, that there are a lot of attacks. I mean, just this morning, I read this astonishing piece in The Guardian, written by someone in this room. It was absolutely disgusting. And it was basically telling Shabana Mahmood to stay in her lane and not even think about talking about migration. I think that's the sort of thing that she will face. I know this because when we were in government, we were called fascist, we were called racist, all sorts of nasty things for doing what the public wants us to do. This is not a race issue. This is about making sure that we control our borders and ensure that our country is one that the people who came here many years ago to live in continues to be safe and socially cohesive. And anyone, especially, you would have heard it, some Labour backbenchers, but the Greens, Plaid Cymru, anyone who tries to attack the people trying to solve this problem on the basis of their race or saying someone like you should not be controlling migration is an idiot, and they need to shut up. Ben Wright from the BBC, please.
Thanks. Kemi Badenoch, a few weeks ago at the Conservative Party conference, your shadow chancellor told a Fringe that if he was in the chancellor's shoes now, he would raise income tax. I think you said it would be the cleanest thing to do. How does that square with what you're saying today?
Well, what you're forgetting, Ben, is that just before he said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mel, he said she should not be putting up any taxes at all. Yeah. But if he was a Labour person thinking and doing things in a Labour way, that's probably where she would go. I think that's my recollection of what happens. I don't mean to speak for Mel. But let's stop pretending that someone being asked a hypothetical question and speculating on what Labour will do is what we think they should do. Yeah. It is not. Martin Brown from The Express.
Thank you. back on the tax thresholds, older people are very concerned that if the thresholds are extended in the budget, that they'll be dragged into paying more tax and tax from 2027 onwards. What's your message to them, and would you commit to never extending thresholds again? And also, the run-up to the budget has been a bit chaotic. If Rachel Reeves does if Rachel Reeves does everything that we expect her to do, in the other language of Shabana Mahmood, should she sod off?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, Mel and I held a rally where we said if Rachel Reeves puts up tax, she should get the axe. And that is because she promised not to raise taxes on working people before the election in their manifesto. They broke that promise with the jobs tax. Immediately after that budget, she said, I am not coming back for more. We are one and done. And what we have seen over the summer and autumn has actually been endless kite flying about them raising every single tax under the sun. Taxes on property, taxes on pensions, taxes on savings, taxes on income. Where will it stop? I mean, this morning we heard about them taxing tourists. It's hard enough getting us to compete well with other countries on tourism. What they will do is destroy the tourist industry. Enough. They need to cut spending. On the freezing of thresholds, I'll let Mel take that one.
Yes, so we all know how it works. You freeze the thresholds, and that would be for the basic rate and the higher rate of tax, and it would also be for the additional rate because that's contingent on the higher rate and what happens to the personal allowance. And that would mean that for non-pensioners, it would drag you into higher NICs and income tax, and of course for pensioners, higher income tax. You asked what our message would be, is we would take different choices. We recognise that elderly people who are not in employment cannot change their financial situation that easily. They're not able to go out and get another job or go and try and work extra hours, etc. That's not the nature of where they are in life, and we should protect them in that way.
Thank you. I think I have... Well, if she puts up tax, she should get the axe. That's our slogan. That's our slogan.
Yeah.
We're using the slogan.
You can join the slogan team if you want.
I have 3 more questions. Next from Lucy Dunn, The Spectator.
Hi, Kemi.
Hi.
And Mel. You say that fiscal responsibility will be at the heart of everything that you want to do. You've taken a tough stance on welfare, but surely you could go further in other areas, for example, pensions. Will you scrap, or at the very least, amend or make changes to the triple lock? And if not, surely that's inconsistent with your fiscal responsibility stance.
It is not inconsistent. What we are doing is wanting us to live within our means and sticking with the principle of contribution. That if you've paid into something, you should be able to take out. A lot of pensioners have paid into the system, and we want to make sure that they are looked after. The reason why we are now even talking about the triple lock is because there is no growth. If we were growing at 2-3% a year, it wouldn't be an issue. We need to get growth. Doing away with the triple lock does not fix the growth problem. It is yet another left-wing way of just splitting the money that's already there rather than making more money. We need to make more money. We need to get Britain working again. That is why we are starting with work. If you want growth and if you want to reduce the cost, the first place to start is by getting people off welfare. Starting with the triple lock is just doing something on the side without addressing the growth issue, which is the foundation of so many of the problems that we're dealing with now. Thank you, Lucy. Next question is Hugo Guy from The Eye.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Badenoch, you've talked a lot over the last year about the mistakes that the Conservatives made in office. Do you now think that one of those mistakes was the austerity agenda and the way it was carried out? Rachel Reeves says this is one of the problems underlying the quote-unquote difficult decisions she'll make in the budget. Independent economists have pointed to certain things, in particular the failure to invest in the nation's infrastructure and also the underfunding of certain departments such as justice. Was it a mistake to go so far as David Cameron and George Osborne did?
So you have to ask yourself, what is austerity? We spent more money than ever before during those years. How is that austerity? We need to actually be honest about what happened, which is that growth in the state continued even when Conservatives were in government. And this is one of the things that I do think was a mistake. We need to do even more. And let's be honest, increasing taxes on individuals is austerity. It is personal austerity for every single person who is having to pay more in tax and having less money to spend on their household. So let's be perfectly clear about that. What we need to do now is focus on growth. That's what will give us the money and the funding to deliver on infrastructure. Right now, we are living well beyond our means. Government needs to get public spending under control. Let's start with welfare. And finally, I have Mary Novick from the FT.
Hello, I'm in the corner. Can you explain one more time, perfectly clear, why Rachel Reeves would have to go if she puts up taxes?
I'm very happy to, because if she puts up tax, she should get the axe. What she said before the election was that she would not put up taxes on working people. She wouldn't tax income. She wouldn't tax all of the things which impacted working people. She broke that promise in the last budget. And so many of the problems we are seeing now are because of the last budget. Unemployment has risen every single month since Labour came into office because of the jobs tax. We are taxing businesses so much now. We're taxing businesses so much now that they are just giving up. If she comes back for more taxes without having serious cuts in public spending, especially on welfare, then she's going to ruin our economy. She will also be breaking the second promise she made, which was that she would not be coming back for more taxes, that it would be one and done. If we can't trust the words that the Chancellor is saying, then what is the point of her being there? Let's get someone who actually knows how to run the economy and put us all out of this misery. All right. Does anyone else from the business audience have a... Oh, Tim Stanley? Yes, fine. Yes.
You've got a mic. Right. We can hear you.
There's a mic coming.
Okay, thank you. As you're in a religious mood, and you say it would be unchristian, sorry, Tim Stanley, Daily T, and you say it would be unchristian to just increase the welfare bill and leave people on benefits. In 2018, a group of bishops wrote to the government of the day to say it is a grave concern that there are likely to be mothers who, because of the child benefit cap, will face an invidious choice between poverty and terminating an unplanned pregnancy. Yeah. One of those bishops is now the Archbishop of Canterbury. So is the Archbishop of Canterbury wrong about God, and you're right?
Right. Well, the comment was not about God that I made on leaving liabilities for the next generation. But it has been very interesting to see the Church of England stray into politics very frequently. They used to say that the church was the Tory party at prayer. Certainly in 2018, I often felt that it was the Labour Party at prayer. But let's be honest, the spending which is going on right now is off the scale. £100 billion in health and sickness benefits. I'm very happy to send the Archbishop of Canterbury a briefing with the facts. But also, I think it's worth reminding people what it is we're talking about here with the child benefit cap. We're not talking about child benefit. You can have child benefit for as many children as you have. We are talking about the additional child benefit that you get on universal credit, which is limited to 2 people. That's all we're talking about. But if we keep this spending going, I'm afraid we are going to go bankrupt. We're not following principles. We will be living well beyond our means, and there isn't going to be any money for those people who are in need if we go bankrupt. That is the fundamental point, and that's the point that I want to leave the audience with today. That if we go bankrupt because of the changes which Labour are making, increasing welfare spending, then there's not going to be any money for any welfare for anybody at all. We need to get a grip now. That is the Christian thing to do. It is the right thing to do. It is not about religion. It is about following the right principles, doing the right thing. Living within our means is a universal policy. It's not just Christians who believe it. Any right-thinking person understands that if you don't live within your means, you're going to run out of money. And it is only the Conservative Party, who is still acting in a way that is going to make sure there's going to be something left for our children. Thank you, everybody.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.